when silence speaks louder than words, Lena Rodriguez pushed her cleaning cart through the gleaming corridors of Vorthok Prime, the massive space station that served as the heart of the Drachnary Empire. The polished metal floors reflected the soft blue glow of the energy conduits that ran along the walls, creating patterns of light that danced with each step she took. 6 months into her contract as a maintenance worker, Alina still felt like an outsider in this world of towering reptilian beings and advanced technology that seemed more like magic than science. The Drachnary were magnificent creatures, standing nearly 10 feet tall with scales that shimmered in shades of deep emerald, silver, and gold. Their elongated heads bore intelligent amber eyes and small horns that crowned their skulls like natural crowns, despite their dragon-like appearance. They walked upright and possessed 4 arms, making them incredibly efficient at manipulating their advanced technology. Most humans found them intimidating, but Alina had always been drawn to those others considered frightening or different. Her supervisor, a gruff Drachnary named Voss, barely acknowledged her existence beyond assigning daily tasks. The other alien workers kept to their own species groups, leaving Alina to work in relative isolation. She didn't mind the solitude much, but sometimes the quiet felt oppressive in the vast station that housed millions of beings. It was during her 3rd week, cleaning the upper levels, reserved for the royal family and high-ranking officials, that Alina first heard the sound. A soft whimpering echoed through the ventilation systems, so faint she almost missed it over the hum of the station's massive engines. The sound was filled with such loneliness and pain that it made her chest tighten with sympathy. Alina tried to ignore it, as she'd been instructed to focus only on her assigned areas and avoid any contact with the royal quarters. But the sound persisted, growing stronger in certain sections of the upper levels. Her grandmother had always told her that some people were called to help others, whether they wanted to or not. Alina was beginning to understand what she meant. The maintenance tunnels provided access to areas most beings never saw. Alina had memorized their layout within weeks, finding them useful for moving quickly between sectors without drawing attention. It was through these tunnels that she first traced the source of the crying, to a large chamber behind the royal quarters. Peering through a maintenance grate, Alina saw a sight that broke her heart. In the center of an enormous, beautifully appointed room sat a young Drachnary, no more than a child by their species standards. Unlike the proud, upright posture of adult Drachnary, this one was curled into a tight ball, scales dull and patchy from neglect. The youngling's mouth moved constantly, but no sound emerged except those heartbreaking whimpers. Alina had heard whispers among the staff about Prince Keth, the cursed heir who had been born without a voice. The other workers spoke of him in hushed tones, describing him as a tragic figure who brought shame to the royal bloodline. Drachnary culture valued strength and communication above all else, and a prince who could not speak was seen as fundamentally broken. But Alina saw something different. She saw a lonely child who needed help, not pity or abandonment. The next day, Alina altered her cleaning schedule slightly, ensuring she would be working near the royal quarters when the sounds were strongest. She brought extra supplies and took longer than necessary to clean the nearby corridors, hoping for an opportunity to make contact safely. Her chance came when a shift change left the upper levels temporarily unguarded. Alina slipped into the maintenance tunnels and emerged through a service panel in Prince Keth's chamber. The young Drachnary looked up in shock, amber eyes wide with fear and surprise. He was smaller than Alina had expected, probably equivalent to a human teenager, despite being several decades old by Drachnary standards. Alina moved slowly, keeping her hands visible and her posture non-threatening. She had experience with frightened animals from her childhood on Earth's agricultural colonies, and she applied those same principles now. She sat cross-legged on the floor, several feet away from the prince, and began to speak in a soft, gentle voice. "Hello there," she said, her words barely above a whisper. "I'm Alina. I've been hearing you, and I wanted to see if you were okay." Prince Keth's eyes darted between Alina and the chamber's exit, clearly torn between curiosity and the instinct to flee. His mouth moved as if trying to respond, but only those soft whimpers emerged. Frustration and sadness flickered across his scaled features. Alina reached into her supply pouch and pulled out a small protein bar from her lunch ration. She unwrapped it slowly and took a small bite, then placed it on the floor between them. "Are you hungry? This isn't much, but it's something." The gestures seemed to surprise the young prince. Slowly, cautiously, he crept forward and examined the unfamiliar food. When he took a tentative bite, his eyes widened with interest. It was probably the first act of simple kindness he'd experienced from a stranger in years. "Good, right?" Alina said with a smile. "It's from Earth. We don't have much, but we like to share what we do have." As Prince Keth ate, Alina noticed something. The royal physicians had apparently missed. Around his throat, barely visible beneath his scales, were faint scars. They formed a pattern too precise to be accidental, too deliberate to be from a simple injury. Someone had hurt this child intentionally. Alina felt a surge of protective anger, but she kept her voice calm and soothing. "Someone hurt you, didn't they? That's why you can't speak." Prince Kef's eyes filled with tears, and he nodded slightly. It was the first real communication he'd made with anyone in years. Alina spent the next hour simply talking. She told him about Earth, about her family's small farm before the climate disasters forced them to seek work off-world. She talked about her younger brother who had struggled with a speech impediment until Alina helped him practice every day for months. All the while, she studied the prince's throat, recognizing the signs of deliberate vocal cord damage. "You know," Alina said thoughtfully, "my grandmother was a speech therapist before the wars. She taught me some techniques for helping people with throat injuries. Would you like me to try?" Prince Keth nodded eagerly, hope flickering in his golden eyes for the first time in memory. Alina moved closer, explaining each step as she gently examined his throat. The damage was old, but not irreversible. With careful massage and exercises, there was a chance his voice could be restored, at least partially. She began with simple techniques her grandmother had shown her, applying gentle pressure to specific points while humming soft melodies from Earth. The effect was almost immediate. Prince Keth's throat began to vibrate slightly, and his breathing became easier. After 20 minutes of careful work, something miraculous happened. "Alina," came a whisper so soft it was barely audible, but unmistakably real. Both of them froze in shock. Prince Keth's eyes went wide with wonder and disbelief. He tried again, his voice slightly stronger. "Alina, you ... you helped me." Alina's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Your Highness, your voice is beautiful." "Keth," the young prince managed, his voice growing steadier with each word. "Call me Keth. No one has called me by name in so long." They talked for another hour, with Keth's voice gradually becoming clearer as Alina continued the throat exercises. He told her about his life of isolation, how he'd been hidden away after losing his voice to prevent embarrassment to the royal family. He spoke of his loneliness, his frustration at being unable to communicate, and his desperate desire to be seen as more than just a broken prince. Alina listened with her whole heart, offering encouragement and teaching him new exercises to strengthen his vocal cords. For the first time in years, Keth felt truly heard and understood. As their secret meetings continued over the following weeks, their bond grew stronger. Alina brought books from Earth, teaching Keth about human culture and philosophy. In return, he shared the hidden history of the Drachnary Empire, including political secrets that explained much about his mysterious injury. Keth revealed that his voice hadn't been lost to a curse or genetic defect, as the public believed. He'd been deliberately poisoned by a political rival of his mother, Empress Thyra, who had hoped to eliminate him as a potential heir. The attack had been made to look like a natural disability, protecting the real culprit while destroying Keth's future. Alina was horrified by this revelation, but it also gave her hope. If the damage was caused by poison rather than magic or genetics, there was a real chance of healing it completely with the right treatment. Each day, Alina worked with Keth on vocal exercises and breathing techniques. She brought him human foods and medicines that might help repair the damage to his throat. Most importantly, she gave him something he'd never had before: the unwavering belief that he could be healed and that his voice mattered, unknown to either of them. Their meetings had not gone entirely unnoticed. In the shadows of the royal quarters, a massive figure watched and listened, her heart breaking and healing in equal measure as she witnessed her son's transformation. Asterisk. A mother's heart breaks, and men's Empress Thyra of the Drachnary Empire was not accustomed to feeling helpless. Standing 15 feet tall, with scales that shimmered like molten gold, she commanded the respect and fear of billions across dozens of star systems. Her forearms could wield weapons that could level cities, and her mind had orchestrated military campaigns that brought entire civilizations to their knees. Yet, for 3 years, she had been powerless to help her own son. She had tried everything to restore Keth's voice. The finest healers in the galaxy had examined him, using technology and techniques from 100 different worlds. Shamans, scientists, and sorcerers had all failed to undo the damage that had stolen her child's ability to speak. Each failure had driven another knife into her heart, and each well-meaning expert had only reinforced the growing belief that Keth was beyond help. Thyra had been forced to watch her bright, curious son withdraw deeper into himself with each passing month. She saw the intelligence burning in his eyes, trapped behind walls of silence and frustration. Court officials whispered that perhaps it was time to name a different heir, that a mute prince could never rule effectively. These whispers reached Thyra's ears like poison, feeding her rage and desperation. It was during one of her late-night patrols through the royal quarters that she first heard something impossible: her son's voice, speaking clearly and confidently. To someone else, Thyra froze in the corridor outside his chamber, hardly daring to breathe as she listened to Keth conversing with a stranger. The voice that responded was unfamiliar, higher in pitch than Drachnary vocal cords could produce, speaking in the strange accent of the human workers. Thyra's first instinct was fury. How dare this inferior species infiltrate the royal quarters? What right did a human have to access areas forbidden to most Drachnary? But as she listened longer, her anger gave way to wonder, and then to something she hadn't felt in years: hope. The human was teaching her son, patiently working with him on exercises that were clearly helping strengthen his voice. More than that, the creature spoke to Keth with genuine warmth and respect, treating him not as a broken prince but as a valued friend. For the first time in years, Thyra heard her son laugh. Night after night, Thyra returned to listen from the shadows. She learned the human's name was Elena, and that she was risking her position and possibly her life to help Keth. The woman's dedication was absolute, bringing him foods and medicines from her own rations, spending hours each day working with him on vocal exercises, and, most importantly, giving him the companionship he had been denied for so long. Thyra began to research this Elena Rodriguez, using her vast network of informants and surveillance systems. What she discovered surprised her. Elena was not some ambitious infiltrator seeking personal gain. She was a simple maintenance worker who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignments to support her family back on Earth. Her psychological profile showed an individual with unusual empathy and a history of helping others without expectation of reward. As Keth's voice grew stronger, Thyra found herself facing a dilemma that challenged everything she thought she knew about humans and leadership. This lowly worker had achieved in weeks what the Empire's greatest minds had failed to accomplish in years. Moreover, she had done it through methods that Drachnary culture had taught Thyra to dismiss: patience, gentleness, and unconditional care. The breaking point came when Thyra overheard Elena teaching Keth about human concepts of family and love. The woman spoke of her brother's struggles with speech problems and how she had helped him overcome them through persistent, loving support. She talked about human families who stayed together through hardship, who valued each member regardless of their abilities or disabilities. On Earth, Elena said, "We have a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. We believe everyone has value, and everyone deserves help when they need it. No one should have to face their challenges alone." Keth's response broke his mother's heart. "I wish I was human," he said quietly. "Humans seem to care about each other more than we do." That night, Thyra made a decision that would change the course of both their lives. She would reveal herself to this remarkable human and learn how her son had been transformed. The next evening, as Elena worked with Keth on advanced vocal exercises, a shadow fell across the chamber entrance. Both looked up to see Empress Thyra's massive form filling the doorway, her golden scales catching the light like armor. Elena's blood turned to ice, knowing that discovery meant certain death or worse. But Keth surprised them both. Instead of cowering or trying to hide Elena, he stood proudly and spoke in a clear, strong voice that carried across the chamber. "Mother," he said, the word ringing with joy and confidence, "I want you to meet Elena. She gave me back my voice." Thyra entered the chamber slowly, her 4 eyes fixed on the small human who had achieved the impossible. Elena stood her ground despite her terror, meeting the Empress's gaze with quiet dignity. "Elena Rodriguez," Thyra said, her voice like distant thunder. "Do you understand what you have done?" Elena found her voice despite her fear. "I helped a friend, Your Majesty. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing more." Thyra's laugh was like the sound of breaking stone. "You have restored the voice of the air to the Drachnary Empire. You have given my son back his future and his dignity. You have achieved what our greatest healers could not." She paused, studying Elena with new respect. "And you ask for nothing in return?" Elena shook her head. "Seeing Keth happy and healthy is reward enough, Your Majesty. I don't need anything else." Thyra was quiet for a long moment, processing this response that defied every assumption she held about human nature. In Drachnary culture, such a service would have been performed only with the expectation of enormous compensation or political advantage. Yet this human seemed genuinely surprised by the suggestion that she deserved reward. "Asterisk. Tell me," Thyra said, settling her massive form onto the chamber floor so she could speak to Alina at eye level. "How did you know my son could be healed when our greatest minds declared it impossible?" Alina glanced at Keth, who nodded encouragingly. She took a deep breath and explained her grandmother's teachings, the techniques she'd learned for helping humans with similar injuries, and most importantly, her belief that Keth's condition was medical rather than mystical. "Your healers were looking for magical solutions to a physical problem," Alina said respectfully. "Sometimes the simplest approaches work best. But more than that, Your Majesty, Keth needed someone who believed in him. Hope is often the most powerful medicine of all." As Alina spoke, Thyra began to understand the profound cultural differences that had made this healing possible. Drachnary society valued strength and perfection, often abandoning those who didn't meet rigid standards. Human culture, despite its many flaws, seemed to have a concept that Drachnary had lost: the unconditional support of the weak by the strong. "This compassion you speak of," Thyra said thoughtfully, "it is common among your people." Alina smiled sadly. "Common enough, Your Majesty. We've learned that we're stronger together than apart. Humans don't survive by being the biggest or strongest. We survive by taking care of each other." Over the following days, Thyra worked closely with Alina and Keth to continue the healing process. She brought in Drachnary medical experts, not to replace Alina's methods, but to learn from them. The combination of human compassion and Drachnary technology proved incredibly effective, and within weeks, Keth's voice was fully restored. But the transformation went deeper than physical healing. Thyra found herself changed by her interactions with Alina, learning about leadership styles that prioritized care over dominance. Alina, in turn, began to understand the complex political pressures that had shaped Drachnary culture and the courage it took for Thyra to challenge centuries of tradition. The revelation of Keth's healing sent shockwaves through the Empire. Some called it a miracle, others a hoax. But when Prince Keth appeared before the royal court and spoke eloquently about his experience, even the skeptics were silenced. Alina became the first human to be granted honorary Drachnary citizenship, but more importantly, she became a bridge between their cultures. Her example inspired other Drachnary to see humans not as inferior beings to be tolerated, but as partners with valuable perspectives to offer. Keth grew into a confident young leader, his experience of vulnerability and healing making him a more compassionate ruler than his ancestors. He often spoke of the human who had taught him that true strength came from lifting others up, not from standing above them, and Thyra, the mighty empress who had once ruled through fear alone, learned that the most powerful force in the universe was not technology or magic, but the simple human capacity to care for one another without conditions or expectations. Under her reformed leadership, the Drachnary Empire evolved from a conquering force into a protective alliance, using their strength to shelter those who needed help rather than to dominate them. The story of Alina and Keth became legend throughout the galaxy, told wherever beings gathered to speak of hope and transformation. It reminded everyone that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the course of history, and that true healing comes not from advanced technology or ancient magic, but from the simple courage to care for one another. In the end, Alina had given Keth more than his voice back. She had given him, his mother, and an entire empire a new understanding of what it meant to be truly strong. And in doing so, she had proven that humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy was not their technology or their military might, but their inexhaustible capacity for compassion. **